morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to ace GMAT sentence correction. My name is Rajat Sidana. I am one of the co-founders of e-GMAT and I'm going to be your co-host today. Accompanying me in this webinar, we have Payal Tandon, who is the other co-founder of e-GMAT, and she's going to be your main host today. Both Payal and I are joining you from Phoenix, Arizona. It's a beautiful morning over here at 7 a.m. Pacific time. Also joining us is Shraddha from Florida. Shraddha is a subject matter expert and she's been with e-GMAT for upwards of 8 years. In addition to that, we have Sandeep, who's a GMAT strategy expert. Both Shraddha and Sandeep would support us during this webinar. This is a free webinar. It's fairly heavily attended. I have upwards of 120 students in this webinar. And to make sure that we do justice to this group as a whole, we ask a few leading questions. The first one's, when do you plan to take the GMAT? If you've not responded to this one, please do so. And I do see there are a few folks who haven't responded to this one. But when I look at the data over here, what I really see is what I call as a fairly even distribution. The smallest segment that I have over here, or the smallest group, has about 17 to 18% of folks. The biggest one has about 25%. So it's a fairly well-balanced group where we have folks who are taking the exam right away, and there are folks who have not even started preparing for the GMAT. Thank you very much for responding. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in this webinar, we'll teach you how to ace GMAT sentence correction. So overall, we're going to focus on applying concepts. We're going to focus on solving questions, and to make sure that you have the right foundation to solve questions, we did send a few video lessons your way. These are just a few of the video lessons that we have as a part of our free trial. If you have not gone through these video lessons, make sure you go through them. They will provide absolute clarity. They will evaluate you on these particular concepts and give you feedback on the level of understanding that you have at a conceptual level. We also have some upcoming free webinars. We have a free webinar on GMAT number properties. That is tomorrow, which is the 13th of October at 7 a.m. Pacific, so about 24 hours from now. If GMAT number properties is an area where you need help with, where you aim to get to that 90th percentile, definitely register for it. We'll solve the easiest and the most challenging questions in this webinar in under 2 minutes using the same methodology, which is going to be a unified methodology overall. So definitely register for that if you haven't. And then next Saturday, we have a webinar on GMAT reading comprehension. Very similar to today's webinar, we'll look at what does it take to get to that 90th percentile on GMAT RC? What are some of the strategies that you need to follow? And how do those, and demonstrate how do those strategies help solve the most challenging questions. So again, you can click on register now to register for either webinar. With that, let me go into the webinar pane. And as I go there, the screen will change for you. I'm going to just put in a yes no poll over here. And let me just see, where's my yes no poll? Apparently I don't have a yes no poll. We do. So can you see the screen which says what is your target GMAT score? All right, pretty much everyone can see that screen. That's wonderful. Please don't put in your answers in the Q&A pod. I'm sorry, I have not provided you a poll pod for that, which I soon will. I just want to make sure that you guys can see that. So here is a poll pod for that, which is what is your target GMAT score? Okay, let's get a few more responses. Out of 145 students, I have just about 90 responses so far. Let's get to at least 120. Okay, all right. That's wonderful. I have about 105 responses. Can we get a few more? Get to that 120? I think we are almost there. Okay. While those responses come in, what I can really see is that the system's more or less settled. We have about 10% of the class that's aiming for a score of 770 plus. We have about 45%, that's the biggest group in that 730 to 760 bracket, about 31% in the 710, 720, and about 12% of the classes in the 600 to 700 bracket. That's wonderful. So the next piece, if you're taking the GMAT today, why should you aim for a score of 730 or higher? Can you put in your reasons in the short answer poll? Why should you aim for a score of 730 or higher? What are the top reasons? Okay. I'll share results as soon as I get about 25 responses. I have about 19 responses right now. So even though you're writing your responses, you're entering in, you don't see them entered it, but they are being entered. So don't worry about that. So I have about 25 responses. Let me broadcast the results. Okay, that is great. I have about 33 responses right now. That's wonderful. To clear cutoff at top B school to get into your dream school, to compensate for my low GPA, scholarships, stand out in admissions, and so on and so forth. That is great. So overall, you've actually listed down 2 out of the 3 reasons you should get a top score. Okay. So essentially, there are 3 reasons why in the world today, in 2019, you should aim for a score of 730 or higher. One is, if you're aiming for the top 20, top 25 B schools, most of them now demand a score of 730 or higher. And when I say demand, the reason why I say that is the median scores at top B schools have steadily risen from 710, which was, if you looked at the top 15 B schools, and you said what was their median score, it was 710 today to closer to 730. So more than half of the class is at that 725, 730 mark or so. In fact, at certain schools such as MIT and Columbia, 80% of the class is above a score of 700. So essentially, these schools is just telling you, hey, if you've scored less than a 700, don't even bother applying. And these are stats, our research team has discovered. We have about a 4-person research team that looks at MBA admissions and the trends going on over here. The second reason, and a very big reason why you should look at is that, hey, B schools today are awarding record amount in scholarships, and more than 50% of that $350 million scholarship kitty that B schools in the US have. And this is all merit-based scholarships. It's expected to go to students who score 730 or higher. So if you just think about this one stat over here, 2 things that come out of it. One is that 730 or higher are just 6% of the total GMAT test takers. They get about 50% of the scholarships, or at least 50%, even higher. And then when you just do the math, you'd find that an average scholarship amount is about $40,000 to $45,000. That's what it comes down to. And many of these people actually even end up getting a full ride as well. So if there's one reason to get to that 730 score, which gives an immediate ROI other than admissions, is that $40,000, $45,000 scholarship amount, which I think is really valuable. And the often overlooked reason is that when you compare the total compensations of a student graduating from a top B school versus someone who's graduating from this B school, which is ranked 25th or higher, what you're going to find is over a 10-year period, that delta will leads to about $500,000 worth of differential in pay. And this delta is the highest it has ever been in the history of MBA. And a lot of people, get number 1, get number 2. They essentially ignore number 3, which is, in my opinion, the biggest factor over there. Okay. So here comes the next question. If you want to score 730, then what should your SC ability be? What sentence correction ability should you target? And you have the range of percentiles over there, but you also have this one thing, and again, be very honest over here, which if you don't know what does SC ability mean, the concept of ability, be very frank and choose that. All right, let's get a few more responses. Let me see the stats here. How many responses do I have? About 607 responses, 108 responses from about 162 students. Let's get a few more. All right. So but 57% of you are aiming for that score of ability of 90th percentile or higher. Another 31% are in that 80th to 90th percentile, both good answers. And then the very few people outside this range. Now, the thing that I want to make sure that you understand is that if you want to get to that score, you should have that ability. And I think that's something that should be embedded in your mind. Why? Because if you're targeting that ability and that 90th percentile ability means that you want to be among that top 10% of GMAT test takers out there. But also, in other words, it means that that when it comes to the GMAT, you want to be better than 70 to 75% of natives who take the test. So you want to be better than 75% of natives. Sorry, my handwriting is bad over here. And that's something that you need to realize. Why? Because when you're studying, your brain will tell you to resort to shortcuts, to really just compromise on a study session when you're studying. And then if you have this embedded in your brain, you'd be able to overcome that inertia. You'd be able to sustain for longer, because you will need to do that to hit that ability level. Now, with that, I would now want to transition the session to Payal Tandon, who's the other co-founder of e-GMAT, and she's going to talk about what does it take to get to that 90th percentile ability overall. So, Payal, over to you.
Thank you, Rajat, for that wonderful introduction, and welcome everyone to Sentence Correction webinar. How is it that you can get to that 90 percentile ability, which is the target of about 63% in this class? Actually, almost, I would say, I think Rajat would have been able to convince you guys to inch your target score for SC to for those of you whose target score is above 80, between 80 and 90. I think you guys should also target that 90 percentile ability so that you can get to that 730 plus score and then get your get the ROI that we just discussed about. All right, let's just do some audio check real quick to make sure that you all can hear me clearly. All right. Can you all hear me clearly? Please press yes. Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Okay, so while we're at the topic of percentile, let's change this question here to what do you think your current SC percentile is? And I'm just going to expand this poll a little bit. Well, where do you think you lie today? All right, let's get a few more responses. All right, I'm going to broadcast the results now. So about, I would say almost more than 80% of the class is below 80th percentile. 40% of the class is less than 60 percentile, according to your own estimate. Okay, thank you for being honest about that. All right, thank you. All right, so let's get into our presentation here. So, as I said,
Payal, I just want to add one thing while you're doing that. So I think this is a great point to do. The data point that you just mentioned is a great thing that you should also keep in your mind, because as we solve these questions, those of you said you are in that 60th to 80th percentile, one of the things that you should really talk about towards the end of this webinar is where do you think you need to put your effort in to improve, and then whether you really are in that 60th to 80th percentile. If the answer is yes, then where do you need to put in effort to improve to that 90th percentile? That's one of the takeaways that you should have from this webinar.
And better yet, thank you, Rajat, for chiming in there. Let me ask this question right up front. Where to All right, so thank you, Rajat, for chiming in over there. In fact, let's get this response from all of you right now. Given that you feel, based on your assessment of where you are at today in SC, what do you think you need to do in order to get to that 90 percentile ability? What do you think, based on your understanding of SC, based on your understanding of what your skill set is, what do you think you need to do in order to get to that 90 percentile ability in SC? All right, I have about 26 responses. All right, understanding the sentence, clear out some concepts and practice, deep understanding of concepts and practice a lot, improve timing. Okay, you get a little better at words. Okay, good. And I think it's important to get some more information here. How many of you feel that you need to solve as many questions as possible in order to get to that 90 percentile ability? How many of you feel that? About 60% of the class. Okay. How many of you feel that you have problems with your concepts right now, and that's what is stopping you from getting to that 90 percentile ability? Okay, about 85% of the class. Sounds good. How many of you feel that it's the timing issue that's keeping you away from that 90 percentile ability? Okay, about 65% of the class. Okay. All right, how many of you feel that you don't have a solid approach that can get you to that 90 percentile ability? Okay, about 85%. Good. All right, let's that was all good. Thank you. So let's solve some questions and assess where you're at right now and give you feedback accordingly. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you question number 1, and I want you to solve this question based on whatever process you used today. And actually, let me ask that question as well, and you must be getting tired of my questions already. What is the process that you used today to solve SC questions? We talked about the method, right? So tell me, explain to me the step-by-step process that you use to solve SC questions. I have just one response yet. Elimination method. Okay. Good. I'm going to broadcast the results. Read the question and then eliminate answers. Whatever option sounds right. Split choices by decision points. Find the meaning first, then POE. Step-by-step e-GMAT. I like that. Meaning analysis, pre-thinking the answer, eliminate wrong choice. Okay. All right. Okay. How many of you use the splits methodology? Click on yes if you use splits. Splits or finding similarities, dissimilarities, whatever you may call it. More than half of the class, about 60% of the class. Okay, sounds good. Okay, so whatever method you're comfortable with today, I want you to use that method to solve this question, question number 1. Okay, and here's the poll, and I am going to time you for this question. So I'm going to give you about 90 seconds. But at the same time, I also want to, so can you all please click on still solving here? That way I know how many of the 175 of the class is actively engaged in solving this question. Okay, let's get this number to at least 100. Okay, I have a question here. Should I take this webinar if I haven't attended verbal prep yet, doing quant prep right now? I believe you will learn a whole lot from this webinar. So this webinar is going to be almost like a diagnostic for you. You'll know what are the right techniques to prepare for SC. So yes, so please continue on here. Okay, so let me now show you the question. Here's the question. Go ahead. All right, your time is up, but I still see about 20% of the class has not put in the responses, so please select the appropriate response. Another 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. All right, so the largest segment over here, 42% of the class has selected choice E. Then for B, the second one is choice B, 22%. Then the third one is 17%. So I would say B and C have almost similar amount of love, but E is the most loved one. Okay. Now tell me one thing. When you were answering this question, what was your confidence level? I mean, did you feel that you are very much in control of this sentence? It's an easy sentence. I mean, just describe to me what your mindset was when you looked at this question or when you started solving this question. Okay. Medium one, confused, parallelism. The sentence was a bit difficult to understand. You're right. It's a little bit difficult context. You have to really focus. Confused, good, but not 100% confident, difficult. Okay. Okay. Was concerned about which concept to use. Thank you for specifying that. Yeah. All right. So let me show you the poll again. Or let me actually walk you through. Okay, so why don't you first tell me what was the thought process that you used, or what was the method that you used to solve this question? And I'm going to show you the question once more. Just tell me, how did you come to eliminate some of the answers, and how did you get to the choice which you selected? So let it be a little bit more detailed. I just don't want you to tell me whether you identified parallelism. Tell me that I eliminated choice A because of this, then I did this, then I did that. And you can take a minute to write that down. Parallelism by, okay, that's good. So identify the parallelism. Then what did you do? Okay, so a number of you started off from parallelism. Good. All right, which is in line with how with one of the methods which I thought about. So essentially, you scanned through the, and let me get this. Give me 1 second here. All right, that's okay. So I'm going to walk you through this. So this is one of the possible thought processes, and I want you to tell me how much of this thought process did you go through. So my first step was that I scanned, so one of the thought process that I'm laying out over here, I scanned the choices to find similarities and patterns. How many of you did this as the first step? That you scan the answer choices as a first step, you scan the answer choices to find similarities and patterns. And when I did that, what I found was that in choices C, D, and E, there is by that has been used. In choices A and B, there is no by. Then I went to my second step to figure out, are the choices with by correct or are the choices without by correct? How many of you did that as a second step to figure out, okay, I've identified the split, now let me think about what split is actually correct. Okay, and then what I figured out was I went into the sentence and I saw that the sentence states less by government regulation, and then I saw than by the coming to the end, right? Okay, how many of you were able to identify that? I can see quite a few of you were based on your responses to my other question. Good. Then what I did was I came to, now I have to, so I rejected choices A and B, right? So I rejected choices A and B right off the bat. Now I have to think about, okay, which of C, D, and E is correct? How did you go about doing that? How did you figure out which of C, D, and E is the correct answer choice? How did you make the determination? Write that down over here. Which one sounds better? Right. And that's kind of what I have also written down over here, that choice C looks weird, the coming to the end. How many of you felt that choice C looks a little weird by the coming to an end? Yeah. So according to this thought process, even I felt that same thing. If I were to apply, or if I were to do this based on what a student would do, I would think, oh, C looks a little weird, so I rejected C off the bat, and then decide which of D and E is correct. So really, for me, just looking at it, the end of seems to be more correct than ending. How many of you felt that way? That the end of is a lot more precise, it's a lot more solid than ending. And then there I go, I selected choice E as the correct answer if I thought through this thought process, right? Now, let me bring back the poll. So it appears that the thought process that I've laid out over here matches with the thought process of 42%, at least 42% of the class that selected choice E. Right? So how many of you can associate with, let's say, about more than 80% of this thought process? Tell me, the thought process that you see on the screen. Okay, almost everyone, 85% of the class. Okay. Now, I am going to tell you what the correct answer is. Okay. The correct answer is choice C. The weird choice that we rejected over here, that is indeed the correct answer. Okay, and this is an official question. This is an official question from Official Guide Advanced book. So it is a 700 plus level question. This has been asked on the test. This is a retired question. This has been asked on the real GMAT test. The correct answer here is choice C. The weird looking choice that you rejected. What do you have to think? Any thoughts about that? Official guide question, advanced official guide question, question number 285, and it's called as a grammar-based question. It's not even meaning-based question. It is a grammar-based question. Okay? And I'm going to discuss with you, I'm going to explain the thought process that I showed you on the previous slide. That was just one of the thought processes that students apply. Okay, and this thought process happens to be applied by at least 85% of the class over here, right? And this is based on splits. And what I'm going to tell you next is that you cannot solve difficult questions correctly by using this pattern recognition, by using these splits. That's an entire no. You cannot solve difficult questions by using such methods. And another thing to keep in mind, your end goal is that 90 percentile in sentence correction. Your end goal is 90 percentile in sentence correction, which means you need to be able to consistently answer difficult questions correctly. And the splits method does not work. Okay, this is something that I want you to keep in your mind. Okay, the splits method does not work for difficult questions. It may work for easy questions. After all, those are easy questions, right? There isn't that much complexity to those questions. That's why the splits method works there, but it doesn't work on difficult questions, and that's what you need to be able to solve. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve this question using the e-GMAT meaning-based method. Okay. Now, for those of you who selected choice C, about 23 of you, I want to hear from you. How did you solve the question for those of you who selected choice C? It could be that you got lucky and you just happened to select that choice, but I want to know from the 23 of you who selected choice C, how did you do that? Difference in meaning conveyed by C and E. Absolutely. Meaning-based method. Good. I'm so happy to hear that. And again, this is analyzed all the option first, logically wrote what fit best. Okay. The end hasn't happened yet. It is coming to an end. Absolutely. Good. Now you can see this, that those of the people who selected choice C, they focused on the meaning part, right? And that's what we're going to talk about. Whereas if you look at the thought process that we used over here, there was no meaning here at all. All it was okay, what patterns are there, what seems right? And that's the thing that we need to break, because this method does not work. Okay, so again, it's an opportunity for all of us to learn, and that's why we are here, right? We are here because we know that something is not working, and that's why you've all taken that step to come and spend the precious 2 hours of your weekend with me over here so that you can fix what's not working. But the first thing is to understand what is it that's not working, right? And that's what we're going to figure out over here. So the step 1 in the meaning-based approach is, and I want you to focus on this word here, to read slowly by strategically pausing with an aim to understand the meaning of the sentence. We are not skimming. We are not just looking for patterns. We are focusing on the sentence as in its entirety to understand, okay, what is it that the author wants to tell me, right? That is what you have to ask yourself when you are doing step number 1. Another way to think about this is, your goal should be, and whatever I'm going to say right now is going to be advice that you have heard, is not something that you have heard from anywhere else, right? When you read a sentence correction sentence, or for that matter, when you read any sentence, whether it's CR, whether it's in CR passage or RC passage, you have to give it your everything. You have to think about this, that okay, the author has spent the time in writing this sentence. The least I can do is give it my best to understand what the author is saying. If you read the sentence from that perspective, there is no reason that you will not focus on understanding the sentence, because all of us have very logical bent of mind. And believe me, SC is all about logic. Sentence correction, the one subsection in GMAT verbal that appears to be more concept-based, that appears to be more grammatical-based, is also very, very logical. And in fact, that's good news to all of us, because all of us over here have that logical bent of mind. So the minute you stop thinking about SC as that conceptual rule set, you will understand the beauty, you will be able to recognize the beauty of it, and SC will become a very interesting subsection for you to prepare for. Okay, so let's come back over here. Okay, the overall, so whenever I read a sentence, I always break it down into small parts so that I can understand the information that the author wants to give me. And where do I pause? So you see over here strategic pausing. I pause at strategic places. Okay, now this is something which I'm going to demonstrate to you right now. Okay, so let's go forward. The overall slackening of growth in productivity. So there is something over here, the overall slackening of growth and productivity. Slackening means the overall reduction of growth and productivity is influenced, so that reduction is influenced less by government regulation. Okay, so I see less by. So this is where I know that, okay, if there is less by something, then obviously there is a comparison, right? So I break my sentence down over here, that the overall slackening of growth is influenced. So the author is talking about certain factors which are behind the reduction in the growth and productivity. That's what the author is talking about. Then I go further, less by government regulation. So he's now, because there is less by, which means there is a comparison here, right? So it's less by government regulation. Then I see a comma here, which is another very obvious pause point. Although that is significant for specific industries like mining. Now that over here talks about, it refers to government regulation. Although, so the author is now presenting a contrast that, okay, although government regulation is significant for some specific industries, right? So it's just some additional information about where government regulation has more impact. Than the coming to an end of a period of rapid growth in agricultural productivity. So this is where you have to pause a little bit, because less by government regulation than the coming to an end of a period. So this is where the comparison is, that less by government regulation than the coming to an end. Okay, than the coming to an end of a period of rapid growth. So he's talking about a certain specific period, and he's saying that this overall reduction is influenced more by the fact that this period of rapid growth in this agricultural productivity comes to an end. By the fact that this thing comes to an end. Okay, that is what the author is saying. So really speaking, there are four things that the author is talking about. The first aspect is that he is explaining factors behind reduction in the growth in productivity, and this is something which I get from this first part of the sentence, right? That overall slackening is influenced by certain factors, right? That's the first thing that the author tells me. The second thing that the author tells me is that this reduction that he's explaining happens by two things. One is by government regulation, and second is the fact that a period of rapid growth in agricultural productivity comes to an end, right? That's the second factor. Then he stitches these two things up by presenting a comparison. We know that there is a comparison, right? So, and according to this comparison, number two, the factor number two over here has more impact than the factor number one. Okay. Now, does everyone understand the meaning of this sentence? Yes or no? Now that I've explained now that we have taken the time to understand the sentence in its entirety, everyone understands the meaning, right? Okay, good. Now what I'm going to ask you is, what aspects of meaning? Now when you right now everyone understands all these aspects, right? But I'm going to ask you, when you read the sentence on your own, okay, when you skim through the sentence on your own, what all aspects, when you solve the question on your own, what all aspects were you not able to understand? And be very honest here, right? What all aspects were you not able to understand? You can mark more than one. All right, I'm going to broadcast the results here. So 66% of the class was not able to understand aspect number 2.2 over here. which comes from than coming to the end, right? So about 70% of the class was not able to get that aspect. Then another 30% of the class was not able to get aspect number 3, which is comparison stated. Okay, good. Thank you for that. Now we're going to go into our second step. So keep this understanding with you. I'm going to remove this poll for now. So keep this understanding with you. Right now, everyone understands all the 4 aspects of the meaning of this sentence, right? Now what we're going to do is, we're going to come to step number 2. Step number 2 is, based on your understanding of the meaning of the sentence and based on the sentence structure that you have come up with by strategically pausing, what are all the errors that you can spot in the original choice? That is the second thing that we're going to do. Okay, and this is a step which almost everyone did correctly, right? Because you were able to figure out that there is this comparison and that by is missing for the second comparison over here. So there is this grammatical error over here, and that is a parallelism based grammatical error, right? So everyone okay with me over here. Now we come to answer choice analysis. So we obviously reject choice A. Very clearly we reject choice B as well, which is what a number of you did. Right? Now we come to choice C, and this is where the beauty of the meaning-based process comes about, right? When we look at choice C, now choices C, D, and E all have by over there, which means they don't have the grammatical error which we spotted in choice A, right? So they all have this error. They all have by over here. Now what I'm going to ask you is, when you read choice C, what you're looking at is by the coming to an end of a period of rapid growth. This is exactly what choice A was trying to communicate. By the fact that this said period comes to an end. And that is what choice C is also communicating. So choice C indeed communicates the intended meaning that the author wanted to communicate correctly, right? So choice C is the correct answer. But you don't stop at that. You make sure that you eliminate all the answers based on solid grounds. Now let's see choice D. What is choice D saying? Choice D is saying by ending a period of rapid growth. So according to choice C, tell me, what does choice C mean? Now that you understand what this fact is, what aspect 2 is, now tell me, what does choice D say? By ending a period, that the factor that's responsible is that someone is ending, that the fact that someone is doing an action of ending this period, and that is not correct. Okay, and that's not correct at all. That changes the meaning of the sentence completely. Is there any grammatical error in choice D? Is there any grammatical error in choice D? No, there is no grammatical error. The only error in choice D is that it changes the meaning. Okay, I have a question here. Can we assume choice A or the original sentence could be wrong grammatically but would not be wrong with respect to conveying the meaning? Absolutely right. And we are going to be focusing, and we're going to be solving 5 questions in this session, all difficult questions, right? And I am going to show you the different ways in which choice A, actually, so first of all, yes, choice A always presents the intended meaning, no matter what. Okay, now the meaning can be explicitly stated to you, or you may have to infer the meaning. We'll talk about that as we solve other questions. Okay, but yes, choice A is choice A for a specific reason. For example, if let's say the original sentence had the verbiage by the end of, then choice A would have been correct. Then choice C would not have been correct. If in my original sentence the original sentence stated by the end of, right, then obviously that is choice C would not have been the correct choice, because that would have changed the meaning. So yes, choice A always sets the intended meaning of the sentence. Okay, so choice D is wrong because it changes the meaning. Now let's look at choice E, by the end of. Now this choice says that reduction happens because of the final part of by the end of the set period, not by the fact that this period comes to an end. Okay, and that's why choice E is wrong. So both of these choices are wrong because of meaning change, and they communicate the meaning as indicated over here. So the thing to keep in mind here is, and I'm going to bring back the poll here from meaning perspective. 75% of the class could not figure out aspect 2 when they solve the question on their own, right? And that is the aspect which has been distorted in choices D and E. Choice E being the more popular choice, more popular incorrect choice. What do you make of that? The one thing, or one of the main things that you were not able to do when you read the sentence because you did not focus on the meaning is that one thing that led you to marking the incorrect answer choice. Need to understand the meaning more. Absolutely. You cannot solve questions without understanding the meaning of the sentence. Okay? So, the takeaway. Always begin solving an SC question with understanding the meaning of the sentence. You need to have complete understanding of the meaning to answer difficult questions. Okay? Now, one thing that I do want to tell you is there is nothing illogical about choice E. Choice E is absolutely logical. Okay, I do have a question here. I still can't get why E is illogical. E is not illogical. E is correct. But the problem with E is that it's not conveying the same meaning that choice A is communicating. Choice A is saying that it comes to the reduction happens because of the fact that certain period comes to an end. The very fact that there is that finality for that particular period, that is what it's talking about. Whereas what choice E is saying is that the impact is of the fact of the impact is because of the end of that particular period. It's not the very fact that there is that finality in that period, but what choice E is saying is that it happens because of the final part. Absolutely. So thank you for saying, as per C, it happens because of coming to the end. E says it's because of the end. Absolutely, very precisely said. So again, choices D and E are both grammatically correct. Nothing wrong with either choices D and E from grammar standpoint. But the problem over here is that they change the meaning. That is why it's very, very important to have complete understanding of meaning, not just browsing through the sentence. That won't work. Because if you browse through the sentence, then you won't get this subtle a difference. It's not a subtle difference. The difference, you won't really understand aspect 2 that well. Okay? So let's make some observations about this question. This is an official question, a difficult question from Official Guide Advanced Book, question number 285 for those of you who are looking for reference. If you apply the splits method and your grammatical understanding, you can reject choices A and B very easily. No problems with that. Okay? But among choices C, D, and E, you will not have any solid basis to select the correct answer choice. And in fact, based on your splits method, based on what sounds right, what looks right, you will definitely end up selecting the incorrect answer choice, which is what happens over here in choice E. In fact, the two incorrect choices amongst choices C, D, and E, both of them grammatically correct, but definite meaning change. Okay? Which means that you need to have that 100% understanding of the meaning. That goes without saying. Everyone with me so far? Yes, no? Because we're going to move to question number 2 here. Okay, now how you're going to do question number 2 is you're going to solve this question by applying the meaning based approach. Okay, no more splits. Can I get that agreement from you? No more splits happening now. Okay, and I'm not saying that you're going to get the meaning based method right away. No, if it were that easy, everyone would be doing that, right? But I want you to start, let this be the beginning of the period in which you start to learn this meaning based approach, so that when you come to the end of it, you are skilled, you get to that 90 percentile ability. So let that thing start right now. Let that process start right now. Okay, now, so you are going to give it your best shot. I am not going to give you just 90 seconds. Again, when you solve the question using your own method, at that time also I gave you enough time. So I'm going to give you a 30-second warning after about 50% of the class has made the choice selection. Okay, so take your time. There's no time constraint right now other than the constraint that's put by your colleagues over here. At this point, I also want to respond to a question that I see here. So because I know this question will be in the minds of almost all of you. How can we solve questions that are lengthy and more than 2 or 3 lines, also considering the time factor, right? So essentially what the student is saying is that how, if you have to spend so much time in understanding the meaning of the sentence, where would you get the time? Because again, GMAT is a timed exam. That's a very, very valid question. How many of you have that doubt in your head? Because again, you all go to splits method because of the speed that it promises, right? Well, you right now, as I said, when you're learning the process, you are going to take long. No doubts about that. But as you gain expertise in this process, you will see that the process is becoming second nature to you. And that's when you will be able to solve even difficult questions within a minute or even less. That's what successful students have been able to demonstrate. Because the meaning, again, think about it, all of you are logical. None of you were born grammarians. None of you want to be, not many of you want to be grammarians, right? So you are right now doing something that is not your solid nature. That's not what your natural nature is, right? What I'm telling you to do, and the thing that works based on my experience of teaching, of having taught 40,000 students, is that I'm teaching you the process which you are a lot more comfortable with. You just don't know it, right? And if you focus on learning that process in the right manner, you will be able to solve the questions within the time constraint as well. Okay, all right, so enough of that. Let's now come to this question here. I'm going to show you the poll. Can you all please click on still solving? Okay, let's get this number to at least 100. There are 175 people in the class. One more. Okay, good. Sounds good. There you go. All right, last 15 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so I gave you guys about 3 minutes, little under 3 minutes to solve this question. And I could see that about 50% of the class had, or about 45% of the class had made a selection by 2-minute mark. So it's okay. Again, I'm not saying that I'm timing. So as I clearly said that I'm not going to be timing you. So how do you feel about this question? The correct answer here is choice B, which about 54% of the class selected. So good. Now tell me, how do you feel about this question? Too much detail, not confident, great, was stuck between B and C. Okay, good. Confident with the meaning of the sentence, good. Little more confident, awesome, very nice. It was actually easier to solve. Okay, good. Now tell me, how many of you consciously used the meaning-based approach? Good. Where did you struggle in? What did you struggle in when you applied the meaning-based approach? Have trouble with all full sentences? Okay. Actually, tell me one thing. I've been very curious about this. How do you do splits approach when a sentence is completely underlined? I always had issues with that. You cannot, right? So how do you solve? If it were not for the meaning-based approach, how would you solve them? You will read them all over again. Okay, all right. Okay. It's super unclear to split with long sentences. Okay, all right, good. So let's go through okay, so these are moot points. What similarities were you able to find in the choices? Let's not worry about that. How many of you actually looked at the choices to give you clues about the question? Let's talk about that. What were the clues that you saw? And I can show you the choices once more. What were the clues that you saw? Modifiers, okay. Okay. All right. Didn't find any subtle clues. Okay, so you were actually evaluating each choice on a standalone basis. Okay, good. So this question is an e-GMAT question. Okay, and one thing which again all of you agree upon is that when a sentence is completely underlined, that it's very difficult to assess similarities and dissimilarities in the question. And so basically your splits method doesn't work. You'll have to evaluate each and every answer choice in its entirety. So it's very obvious that you need to use the meaning-based approach, right? So the meaning-based approach then gives you a very solid framework to attempt that question. So let's solve this question now using the meaning-based approach. So I start reading the sentence by strategically pausing at appropriate points. Because diegetic music, now I know for sure the sentence, because it begins with because, means that there is a cause and effect that the sentence that the author wants to communicate, right? Now, because diegetic music actively referenced in the film rather than, okay, so I have a comparison over here. So I'm going to just pause here and I'm going to write and I'm going to say, okay, it's actively referenced in the film means that it's actively referenced rather than confined to the background. So there is this comparison. Now, what does this part of the sentence tell me about diegetic music? It gives me a property of diegetic music, right? It describes a characteristic of diegetic music, absolutely. Invoking a sense of verisimilitude. Now, what does this part talk about? What is the role of this part? Invoking a sense of verisimilitude. It's not a verb because there is no is, are, am over there. So it's a modifier, absolutely. It's a modifier, it's an ing word, it's a verb ing modifier. It It's describing, absolutely, it modifies the diegetic music. Okay, it's describing diegetic music. That diegetic music invokes a sense of verisimilitude, right? That's what it's saying. The idea that art can express a truthful version of reality. Now, this part describes verisimilitude, right? It's a modifier of verisimilitude. Filmmakers creating period dramas use it often. Okay, so when I'm reading this sentence, everything till this point flows pretty much smoothly. But as soon as I come over here, filmmakers creating period dramas use it often. I'm like, where did the filmmakers come from? We've been talking about diegetic music. Yes, it's referenced in the film, it's used in the films, but all of a sudden there is a new subject here, new doer, new entity here, filmmakers. But so there is that jump here. How many of you felt that jump while you were reading the sentence? Absolutely. I'm so glad to see that. Now this jump in the meaning of the sentence, you will notice only if you are reading the sentence slowly with an intent to understand the meaning. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to experience this jump. Would you guys agree? If you had not read the sentence, if you were not reading the sentence from the standpoint of meaning, you wouldn't have really noticed that jump. And that's the beauty, that's one of the beautiful points about meaning-based approach, because you focus on meaning and because the question is designed in that manner. And difficult questions are designed in that manner, right? Whenever there's a jump in the meaning, you will be able to spot those jumps very easily. Okay, and that's what is happening over here, right? There's something not smooth about it. You were not prepared to start reading about a new subject, right? So filmmakers creating period dramas use it often. Now, what does it refer to here? It refers to diegetic music. There is no ambiguity about it. Okay, yes, there are these others. You can say film is there, background is there, verisimilitude is there, the idea is there, art is there, all of these, version is there, reality is there. All of these are nouns that, yes, that grammatically it can refer to, but logically it only refers to diegetic music. There is no ambiguity about it. Okay, so there's no pronoun error here. So filmmakers creating period dramas use it often. So again, that's a complete fact over here, but I just don't know how it relates back to the sentence. So what I do now is I am going to list out the aspects that I understood. Aspect number 1, feature of diegetic music is presented. What is that feature? That it's actively referenced in the film rather than being stuck in the background. Okay, that's a characteristic. Aspect 2, DM invokes a sense of verisimilitude. This is what I get from here, that it invokes a sense of verisimilitude. Aspect 3 comes from here. Filmmakers who create historical dramas use DM often. Okay. Now, how many of you were able to get all these 3 aspects when you read the sentence on your own? Okay. How many of you were not able to get all the 3 aspects? Or how many of you missed out on at least one of the aspects? Okay, all right. Which one? Actually, let me get a poll here. It's important to understand which aspect was missed out. So, question. Give me 1 second here. One second, guys. To add one more choice here, none. Okay, there you go. Now tell me, which all aspects did you miss out on? So 2 and 3 both. Okay. All right. But I'm glad to see that quite a few of you didn't miss out on any of these aspects. Okay, good. Now what we're going to do next is, now one thing which I think all of you will agree upon is that the sentence began with because. But do we have, based on the meaning aspects which I brought about, there is no mention of what the cause and what the effect is, right? So there's definitely something missing in this sentence, and that's what we're going to now figure out. Because presents causality, so, and the author faced some problems with presenting the right causal relationship, right? So now, given the information that we have over here, given that we have aspects 1, 2, and 3, and we understand those, we need to now figure out, we need to now infer this causal relationship. Okay, so first of all, we're going to figure out what the effect is. Now, what do you think the effect is? Which of the 3 aspects do you think is the effect? Okay, let's mark here. Which of the 3 aspects do you think is the effect? Absolutely right. Aspect number 3 appears to be the effect, right? Because filmmakers who create historical dramas use DM often. Very good. Now tell me, which of the 2 aspects which of the 2 aspects should be the cause? Absolutely right. Aspect number 2. See, it doesn't make sense to say that because diegetic music is actively referenced instead of being in the background, filmmakers use it. That doesn't make sense. But it definitely makes sense that because diegetic music invokes a sense of verisimilitude, and by the way, what is verisimilitude? Verisimilitude is the idea that art can express a truthful version of reality. Now filmmakers who are creating period dramas, they are creating historical dramas, which means that they have to show reality that has already happened in the past, right? So it makes sense to use diegetic music because diegetic music invokes that sense of verisimilitude. It's all logical, right? There's no nuanced grammar rule over here at all. All you are saying is what makes sense, what makes logical sense, right? So it makes logical sense to say that because of aspect 2, aspect 3 happens. Right? So the logical causality is because aspect 2, aspect 3. Okay, this is what leads to the filmmakers using period dramas. So this inference is absolutely required. Okay, when you do not get that 100% clarity in meaning, as it happened in this sentence, you need to spend those few seconds on the original choice to infer the information from the sentence before you look at the answer choices. Okay, that's an absolute must. Before you look at the answer choices, you need to have that solid confidence that yes, I have everything under control. I know what the author wanted to say. Now all I have to do is figure out the grammatically correct way to express that. Okay, is this point clear? You need to infer in order to figure out what answer choice you will end up selecting. A number of you said that you were confused between choices B and C. That confusion point, and again, when we'll come to choice C, I'm going to show you that, comes from the fact that you didn't infer. Okay, but right now, so let's just hold that thought and let's go through the process here. The second step is to identify errors, right? Now, in this case, we kind of already identified the error. We know that the verb for diegetic music is missing. And that's another beauty of applying the meaning-based approach. When you read the sentence to understand its meaning, you know right away when there are such structural issues. Because when you read the sentence, you were able to figure out that, okay, this seems to be a jump. Now ask yourself, why did this mention of filmmakers appear to be the jump? Because you were still not done with diegetic music. You still didn't know what diegetic music does. Right? That's why, and why was that the case? Because the author forgot to write the verb here. Right? So that's the reason why you're able to figure out such structural issues if you're reading the sentence for meaning. Okay? Now, the way to correct that also comes from the meaning, because you know that aspect 2 is the cause, so you know that invoking should be converted into a verb. Do you guys see how meaning links with everything? How meaning helps with identification of errors, how meaning helps with how the error should be corrected? Right? Alright, so now I start looking at the answer choices. And again, the things that I have to keep in mind is, apart from, now one thing that so I want to draw your attention to this. Now this is something that almost everyone does. They may not be doing it to the level of to the degree of application that I want them to do, but at least you are all aware of the fact that these are all the grammatical errors that exist, that could exist in the sentence. So whenever we do whenever we do error analysis, we need to make sure that we look at the sentence from the standpoint of all these errors, and that's something which we teach with all our solutions. Okay. Now, apart from that, another thing that I want you all to start doing is, when you are evaluating answer choices, I want you to take that meaning analysis with you. That meaning analysis, that meaning the meaning that you inferred, I want you to take all of that with you when you're evaluating answer choices. What do I mean by that? Apart from figuring out what are the grammatical errors, I want you to evaluate each and every answer choice based on the aspects of the meaning that you know that the author intends to communicate. Because once you start doing this, once you start taking each of the individual aspects into your answer choice analysis, you will see that your accuracy is going to increase, because you have meaning front and center with you at each and every step of the process. Is this point clear? Yes or no? Remember, in the previous question also, aspect 2.2 was where the meaning difference came about from, right? In this case, that's what we're going to see now. So choice number B, if you look at it from aspect 1, active reference instead of stuck to the background, absolutely right. Actively referenced, it modifies diegetic music. So aspect 1 is fine. Then let's look at aspect 2. DM invokes a sense of verisimilitude. Diegetic music is often used because it invokes. Absolutely right. So aspect 2 is also right. Then let's see aspect number 3. Filmmakers who create historical dramas use DM often. Filmmakers creating period dramas. Okay, diegetic music is often used by filmmakers creating period dramas. Yes, the voice has changed, the structure has changed, but aspect 3 is still being communicated. Okay, then I look at the causality that we inferred. Diegetic music is often used by filmmakers because diegetic music invokes a sense of verisimilitude. Causality is also okay. So choice B, as I'm reading the sentence, I don't see any grammatical errors. As I'm sifting through the sentence to make sure that all the aspects of meaning are being communicated correctly, I don't see any issues. So choice B appears to be the correct choice. Okay, let's look at choice C now. We'll follow the same thing. And B and C, and let me bring about the poll here. So choice B was marked by 53% of the class. Choice C was marked by 16% of the class. So some of you did say that you were confused between choices B and C. So let's look at this. Choice C. Filmmakers creating period dramas often use diegetic music. Right, so this is aspect number 3, so we are okay over here, right? Which invokes a sense of verisimilitude. DM invokes a sense of verisimilitude. This part is also fine. The idea that art can express truthful version of reality. This part is fine. Because it is actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. Now, aspect 1 is fine because it's talking about the feature, but causality is where there is an issue. Because here, the causality is with aspect number 1 instead of aspect number 2, and that is where the issue is. Okay, so remember, if you had not inferred the meaning, you would have marked this choice as the correct choice. Do you see that? Okay. Let's look at choice D. There's not much. 9% of the class selected choice D. Choice D, again, causality is an issue here since it is music actively referenced in the film. Again, this is not the right causality. In terms of aspect 2 as well, DM invokes a sense of verisimilitude. That part is also not correct here. Okay. Now let's take a look at choice E. Choice E is not right because there is no causality whatsoever now. Causality itself is gone. Aspects 1, 2, and 3 are fine, but causality itself is gone. And that's because there is no because now. That's why choice E is wrong. So about quite a few of you selected choice E, 20 of you. Okay, so you selected the wrong choice because, and it's wrong because you didn't observe the causality. Okay. So the thing that I want you to keep in mind is that, you need to, in the sentences that do not communicate complete meaning, you have to infer the meaning of the sentence. So this was an e-GMAT question, completely underlined. Splits were not possible, as all of you agree with. Again, there were two grammatically correct choices, but both of them were incorrect. Why? Because of meaning change. Grammatically, both were correct. Choices C and E. Both were correct grammatically. Okay, let me go back over here. Choice E, grammatically absolutely correct. Okay, choice C, grammatically correct. No problem here. Now, there is a question here, can we eliminate C for pronoun ambiguity? There is no pronoun ambiguity here. Filmmakers creating period dramas often use diegetic music because it is actively referenced. So if we ignore this part here, okay, for now, filmmakers creating period dramas often use diegetic music because it is actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. It is absolutely clear that it refers to diegetic music only from logic standpoint. Okay, you're not really confused. Logically, you're not really confused whether it is referring to period dramas or not. Right? So there is no pronoun ambiguity here. Another thing is pronoun ambiguity errors, unless there is a big pronoun ambiguity and there is a question, I believe, in this, I don't think there's a question in this session. Unless there is a big problem with the pronouns, don't use it as a deterministic error. It is a secondary error. Okay, and again, that's the beauty of your meaning-based approach. You don't have to rely on these nuanced grammar rules to eliminate answer choices. If you're focusing on the meaning, you will be able to get to the correct answer. Okay, and you see that over here. This was an official question. Two incorrect choices, both of which are grammatically correct, but meaning change. So meaning is the key over here. e-GMAT question. Two incorrect choices, both grammatically, two of the incorrect choices, both grammatically correct, but meaning change. Okay, when you see such extent of proof, you know that, okay, you have to go with the meaning-based approach. Okay, even if there are choices in which there is no meaning change, if you are using meaning-based approach, you are a lot more confident. That is a sure shot way of you to solve any type of question, whether it's easy, medium, or hard. One of the students asked me, when I'm taking the test, I don't know which question is hard, so when should I know when to apply meaning-based approach? And my answer to that student is, and to all of you who have that doubt, is that there is no reason for you to choose one method or another. Always choose meaning-based method by default. Let that become the default method of operation for you guys. That is very, very important. Okay. So one additional thing that we saw in this question was that you need to infer meaning when the sentence does not communicate straightforward meaning. You have to take that extra step to infer the meaning. Okay, that is very, very essential. Okay. Okay, so now let's take a pause from answering questions. Okay, I want you to think about something here. Tell me how many of you have spent more than 25 hours preparing for sentence correction? 60% of you? Okay. Give me 1 second here. Okay. Do you feel that you're at 90th percentile? For those of you who've spent the time, and I know that I've asked this question. Okay, not many of you feel that you're at 90th percentile. Have you solved every question using the meaning-based approach? I kind of know the answer here. No, you haven't. Okay. Remember, to achieve that 90th percentile ability, you need to have that 100% clarity in the meaning. And for you to have that 100% clarity in meaning, you need to learn the strategic pausing technique which you need to use in order to solve the question, in order to understand the meaning completely. That is a technique that you absolutely have to master. And e-GMAT students learn this technique in Master Comprehension course. We have developed this standalone course which teaches you just how to read, which only teaches you how to read the sentence by strategically pausing. And we spend 2 hours on that course. By the time you are done with that course, you have a very strong handle of where all you need to pause. And then as you go through the course, as you go through the sentence correction course itself, you continue to enhance that, you continue to master that technique. Because each and every question that is solved in the e-GMAT course and Scholarium platform is solved utilizing the strategic pausing method. Okay. All right. Now, the next thing that I want you to think about is, so the first thing is you need to build your foundations, which is you need to learn how to read the sentence by strategically pausing so that you read the sentence to get 100% understanding of the meaning. Second is, you need to learn and master 200 concepts. Now, what am I talking about? SC, when you're preparing for SC, GMAT tests, okay, GMAT sentence correction tests you on at least 200 concepts. How many of you were familiar with that? How many of you were aware of that? That there are at least 200 concepts that are tested. Okay. I believe a number of you would be thinking about concepts in terms of, let's say there are these error types, right? So there are 8 or 10 error types. So those are the concepts. No, if you dig down, if you dig deeper, you will understand that, okay, SC, it's only for SC. SC, there are 200 concepts. And I'll give you an example of the concepts over here. Okay. So the first thing is you need to learn and you need to master these 200 concepts. Not just learn, you need to master them. Second is you need to know how to, you need to have a method that you can utilize to apply these concepts. Okay. So now my next question to you is, how many of you have evidence that you have mastered these 200 concepts? Or if you feel that you haven't mastered these concepts, what is the evidence that you will rely on to determine that you have mastered these 200 concepts? You don't have that thing, right? Okay, so let me now give you examples of these concepts. Okay, verb ed modifiers. When you see verb ed, so they shouldn't be modifiers. When you see verb ed words, are they acting as verbs or modifiers? That's a concept. When you see relative pronoun modifiers, there are 5 concepts within this topic of relative pronoun modifiers. How do you use who? How do you use whom? What are the modifiers rules with regards to which, with regards to that? Noun modifiers as an entity can modify slightly far away noun. That's a concept in itself. Verb ing modifiers work as action modifier. There are 2 concepts within this. Action modifiers when they present the how part, action modifiers when they present the result. Actually 3 modifiers when they are placed up front. So there are 3 concepts with regards to verb ing modifiers as action modifiers. Verb ing modifiers as noun modifiers. Cases in which verb ing modifiers and noun plus noun modifiers can be used interchangeably. Cases in which they cannot be, they should have been cannot be. Modifier errors that happen because of change in voice. Modifier errors that happen because of the placement of modifiers. These are all either standalone concepts or within these itself there are a couple of concepts that exist, right? So, how many of you have evidence that you have learned these concepts? Let's first talk about learning. Okay. How many of you have confidence that you have mastered these concepts? Not just learned, but that you've mastered these concepts. Okay. My next question. What sources do you use today to learn such concepts? Write down the sources here. Okay, I'm going to read a few over here. There are some who are saying e-GMAT, that's good. Manhattan, YouTube GMAT Club, Economist Prep, tuition classes, official guide, Manhattan Books, Aristotle, class red book. Okay, all right. GMAT Club, Manhattan Prep. Didn't even try to learn until now. I'm glad that you said until now. That's good. Online. Okay, so just Google. Okay. Now, let me ask this question to the e-GMAT students. When you took so how many of you have attempted this file here, verb ed words, verbs or modifiers? Good. Did you see the feedback that you got after you took this file? Did you get the score at the end? Absolutely. That's your feedback point. How many of you scored more than 80% in this particular file? Good, which means that you got this concept, right? That is the beauty of learning each of these concepts through the e-GMAT course. You get feedback, and I'm going to talk about that. To learn these concepts, to master these concepts, you need to first learn, you need to refine, and then you need to excel. To refine and excel, you need to get that feedback that tells you whether you've learned the concept or not. And it provides you that corrective action. Right? At e-GMAT, while you are learning, refining, and excelling on these 200 concepts, you get feedback at least 87 times. Versus if you compare that with a typical book, okay, or a typical online course, you get only 8 to 10 feedback points. What do you guys have to think? Any comments on this part? Is this surprising? Absolutely. Manhattan books only cover topics. They teach you a whole lot of stuff. They teach you all the grammar nuances, right? But again, they don't give you feedback. Did you learn that? Did you understand, do you understand the difference between verb ed words when they act as verbs or when they act as modifiers? No, you don't. You don't get that feedback. And that's what, how many of you have felt that after you go through that bulky book or after you go through the alternate sources that you utilize, you have that feeling of overload of information and you don't really know, okay, what have you actually learned? Yes, some of the things may have stuck in your mind, but you really don't have that solid handle of, I know this very well, but I don't know this part. And that is the difference between a student who's successful, who's on that path to success, and the student who is struggling. You are putting in the effort, but you are struggling. Okay. I have a question here. What do you have to say to someone who's 1 month away from the exam and needs to refine their verbal concepts? Join e-GMAT. We'll give you a personalized study plan for you so that you know where to focus your effort. And that's the beauty of the data that we capture. Okay. Again, this is just a small subset of data that I'm talking about. Okay. Without getting these 87 feedback points, while you are learning, I have a comment over here, Manhattan tests give feedback. Manhattan tests give you feedback when you're taking a mock exam, right? You're talking about a full-length mock exam. We are not talking about that. I'm talking about when you're learning that concept to the level of, is this verb ed word a modifier or a verb? At that point in time, I'm giving you feedback. Okay, that is the feedback that I'm talking about, and you guys deserve that. You have these 200 concepts that you need to learn and master. Just imagine putting all those 200 concepts in your mind without telling you what you know, what you don't know, right? At this point in time, I'm giving you 87 feedback points so that you don't remain in dark about your proficiency level. Okay, that is the beauty of the feedback that you get over here. You know precisely what is it that you have to work on, what is it that you have mastered, and the stuff that you need to work on, we're going to help you out with that. Okay. So there's a student here, my score has sort of stopped at 80%. It's not improving beyond that. I'm preparing since the last 3 months. Write to us. Give us your send us what is it that you are, where is it that you're stuck at. We're going to take a look at your account because we have all this data and we have a 5-person strategy team on standby who simply responds to looks at your data and gives you precise feedback. Write to us. Okay, we have all the data that we need to tell you what exactly you're not doing right. Okay. All right. So again, to achieve that 90th percentile ability, you need to learn and you need to master. Okay. The second thing that you need to do is you need to apply these concepts on sentence correction questions. Okay. So I'm going to talk about that, but I do have a question here. How do you get data? Hold on to that question, and I'm going to show you the sample size, the sample data set in this session. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the application part. When do you learn application? Okay, so let me ask this question. When do you learn the application? So you select yes if your answer is number 1. You select no if your answer is number 2. While learning the concepts, how do you learn application today? That's good. I'm glad that you are learning application while learning the concepts. But how do you learn application today? Tags on GMAT Club. Okay, what else? e-GMAT, good. By solving questions, yes. Official guide questions, I'm guessing. Okay. Now, Ron's videos, Economist app, appearing quizzes after concept learning. Okay, all right. So let's go through this now. What application method did you learn? Again, I think we all know the answer to this question. It's splits method. But let me just ask this question once more. When you learned the application, did you learn the application method that we used to solve questions 1 and 2? The answer is no. We already know that. So when you learned the application method on your own, you didn't really use the meaning-based approach, right? We've already addressed that. So first, let's talk about when is it that you should be learning the concepts, the application. Now, if you think about it, this is the increasing difficulty level of concepts, right? So subject-verb concepts are the easiest of all, right? And the size of the ovals here represent the number of concepts. So there are more concepts in verbs than there are in subject-verb topic, right? So, but verbs is a little bit more involved topic than subject-verb. Then pronouns, not as much as subject-verb, but yes, you talk about pronouns after you've talked about subject-verb and verbs. Modifiers, one of the largest segments, largest topics, right? Parallelism and comparison combined will be similar in size with modifiers, and then idioms towards the end, right? Now, most prep courses first teach you all the concepts and then they teach application, if at all they teach application, okay? They don't teach you application with the concepts, that's for sure. Now, you guys are doing application on your own. You're learning application on your own by going through GMAT Club questions, by going through official questions on GMAT Club or official guide. You're doing that on your own. But if you go through the course structure of most courses, you're going to see that they teach you application and they teach you all the concepts first and then the application. That's what you'll do with the book, right? So now at e-GMAT, we insert the method teaching duo, application and practice files. That's what this is, a duo that we utilize that we utilize to teach you the application at various points as you are learning the concept, which means that there is an application file and practice file duo right at subject verb state, and these questions are purpose built such that they don't have any nuanced errors over here. Okay, they don't really have that. Likewise, when I come to the verbs part, there are two of such insertion points. Because there are more concepts, we teach you simpler concepts first, and then we teach you the application. Then we teach you the next level of difficulty of concepts, and then we teach you the application. And the files that you see over here are purpose-built. They include the questions, only those questions which test you on the concepts that you've already learned. Now, a number of you said that you use tags on GMAT Club. We tried to categorize questions based on just official questions based on just subject, verb, verbs, right? It becomes really difficult to select only those questions that are testing you on subject, verb, and verbs only. Because again, after all, that's not how things are designed, right? There are SC questions test you on different concepts altogether. Right, so when it is a pretty difficult, challenging task to segregate all the questions. So the tagging that you see on GMAT Club, that's not really that precise a tagging, because it is difficult to do that. I'm not saying that they are not doing a good job. It is really hard to do that. Okay, but the questions that we create at e-GMAT, we know the topics that we have taught you. So we know that, okay, we can't be adding complexity from pronouns perspective in the questions that we are putting for you in the subject verb block or in the verbs block. But we know that when we get to the pronouns application file, here we can put in all the stuff that you have learned in subject, verb, and verbs. Okay, because we control the questions that we are creating specifically for the file. Okay. Likewise, when you go to modifiers, you're going to see 3 different application practice file combination. Because there are more concepts, there are more application insertion, application learning opportunities. Okay, as you go through, as you learn the concepts in this progressive manner, and as you go through these application files, what you're going to see is that your ability in sentence correction is going to improve. By the time you get to the end of it, your ability will already be, and let me use my pen here, your ability will already be over here at 70th percentile, at least 70th percentile by the time you finish the course. And that happens because of how you learn. Okay. Okay, please tell me, one should attempt the OG questions only after learning all the modules, or can we do that midway too? Don't do them midway. Don't do them, start doing the OG questions only from modifiers. Only when you begin with modifiers. Only after you're done modifiers. Because till that time, all the concepts are still getting baked in. Okay, but don't, while you are in this part, don't do the OG questions. Okay, all right, so I have questions. How many questions will we be solving? There are 3 more difficult questions that we will be solving. Because one thing that I want to make sure, I see this comment here, is this a sales pitch or a prep course? Frankly, if you feel that this is a sales pitch, please feel free to leave this webinar. I feel so, it's my responsibility to make sure that all of you learn in the right manner. And it's really heartening to see when I see people struggling to score well. And they struggle not because they don't put in the effort. They struggle because they are not putting in the effort in the right direction. Okay? Learning all the concepts in one go and application towards the end is not the right way. You need to know the right way to learn. And that's what I'm trying to help you understand. Okay? For me, it's very easy to solve 5 questions and then be done with it. Right? But telling you to change the manner in which you learn, that's a very difficult thing to do. All right? Okay, so you need to learn the method, right? Through the purpose-built application file. So when you, so again, I'm going to repeat myself. If you are simply utilizing the questions in official guide or the questions that are tagged on GMAT Club, at this point in time when you're learning, you are going to see problems with that. Okay, you can see your fellow student who's basically faced the problem, and thank you for sharing your struggles, because it really tells us that you are not alone in this struggle. And I understand your pain point, right? You've attempted OG questions and you found yourself miserably failing. That's not the right way to prepare. And see, you're putting in the effort, right? So yeah, again, OG questions, you are required to, you should be solving OG questions, but not while you're learning. That shouldn't be the way to prepare for your test. Okay? That shouldn't be the way to learn the process. Okay? They need to be coupled with with these purpose-built files so that you know how to apply the method. Okay? All right. So another thing which I want you to think about is when you are learning the method, utilizing the application files, you need to know that are you learning all the steps properly? Okay, are you struggling with some aspects of the method? Right, so this is something which the system needs to give you feedback about. Okay, you need to get this feedback so that you can take corrective actions right there and then. Okay, how many of you get this kind of feedback today? When you solve questions on GMAT Club or on any other app, do you get this feedback about what step you're faltering on? Or is it just, oh, I answered this question wrong because it's a parallelism question and I missed out on that? How many of you get this kind of feedback today through the preparation material that you're using? You don't, because that's not what they are designed for. At e-GMAT, students get this feedback 23 times when they are learning the SC method. And let me ask the e-GMAT students, when you did the verbs application file, did you get the feedback that you were doing well or that you were not doing well? When you solved those 5 questions, did you see that feedback? Did you get the feedback on what step are you faltering on? Because the solution is based on the meaning-based method, you knew that were you not able to understand the meaning, were you not able to understand the errors, right? That's the beauty of getting the feedback. Now let's see how this feedback enables you to hit 90th percentile. Now Sahil, he got 730, we 38, okay, and you can see his debrief on GMAT Club. And so Shraddha or Sandeep, if you can copy the link and provide that to everyone through the Q&A pod, that would be good. Now, one of you asked me, okay, how do you collect data? This is how we collect data. These are concept files here, subject, verb, agree, number. This concept file has at least 3 concepts that we teach. And then there are 10 questions that we utilize just on these 3 concepts to tell you whether you've learned those concepts well or not. This is the time that the student spent on this file. Okay, subject, verb makes sense. Just about 1 concept here, right? But there are 5 different questions and the student solves that, okay? And looking at this, we can tell, is the student learning in the right manner, okay? Now, after you do all of this, so again, this is another concept file. Look at the amount of time that the student has spent, about an hour on just this one concept file on subject verb, where words are always singular. Okay, now this student is absolutely confident about what his proficiency level in this particular concept is. Okay, look at the amount of time he spent on this, an hour. Now these files are just about 10 minutes long, but these students who are successful, they spend the time in making sure that they learn everything from the file. And look at this, when this student tested his proficiency level in all the questions, he was able to get most of the questions correct. Application file, he scored only 60%, but look at the amount of time that he spent on this file. There are only 5 questions here. He spent a lot of time here, about on an average 10 minutes on each question, right? And look at the result of that. In the practice quiz, he was able to solve all the questions correctly. Okay? That's the beauty of getting the feedback. You know where to spend the time to make sure that you're learning the right way. It's not just going through the motion. You're not working in that black box, right? You have that precise data that tells you where you need to work or where you have excelled, and the system gives you feedback. Likewise over here, he did well over here, but he spent quite a bit of time because he wanted to make sure that he gets, and maybe he made multiple attempts here, and in the final attempt he was able to get 83%. Okay, verbs application, he did well. Verbs practice quiz, he didn't do that well. He scored only 64%, but he bookmarked the question. So this is another level of feedback that you get, which is not even included in the 87 points that I was talking about. He bookmarked these questions to make sure that he revises these questions at the end. Okay, so that's the beauty of the feedback that you get. Sahil took this feedback seriously and he took corrective actions at the right time. I'm going to read this verbatim from his debrief. For me, the biggest thing regarding SC was the application of concepts. And again, people don't focus on that. Many concepts, my concepts were not bad in attempts 1 and 2, but I lacked the knowledge of application of the same. Concepts can narrow down the options from 5 to 2, but after that, application of concepts plays a game-changing role. Successful students leverage feedback to excel. You can look at all these success stories. These are all debriefs on GMAT Cloud. Look at their scores. Verbal 41, verbal 40, verbal 42, verbal 42, verbal 41. These are the average concept scores that they have. These are the average scores that they have in application files. Out of the 87 feedback points, these students got positive feedback points in at least 80% of the files. They got corrective action required feedback points in these files and they took the corrective actions. If you have this data, again, all of us are logical here, right? Data has all the power. If you have the data, the power resides in you. You can now take the decision on how to prepare, how to make sure that you get to that 90 percentile score. Does this make sense? Let's read this part from Rohit's debrief here. He scored a 760. There is absolutely no comparison. Prior to using the meaning-based approach, I was lost in 2 or 3 out of 5 answer choices. And that's what you saw in the first 2 questions. My brain would tell me, even this is right, this sounds right, there was no way to come to a conclusion. Right? You guys felt the same with the first question that you saw, or the second question that you saw. With the meaning-based approach, my mind was at ease. I could see the core of the sentence, understand what the author wanted to say. I could see the genesis of the sentence. I could see various appendages attached to the sentence. I was rejecting choices on solid grounds, and my verbal score improved from verbal 32 to verbal 42. You can watch his YouTube interview with Rajat on YouTube here, video interview. Jim Yee, one of our latest success stories. The meaning-based approach is a game changer. Before this, I was just learning grammar, but I was unable to solve 700 level questions. When you get to 700 level, grammar is not going to be the deciding factor. Okay, you've already seen that in the 2 questions that we solved. Because you would always have 2 options left, and grammar is not going to be the deciding factor. The only way you would be able to select the correct answer in 90 seconds is by understanding the intended meaning. Again, video interview on YouTube, definitely look at it. So now let's solve the remaining 3 questions, and you're going to try to solve these 3 questions as well with the meaning-based approach. So let me show you the question here. Let's click on still solving. All right, here you go. All right, last few seconds. I'm going to end the poll now. All right. So, how confident do you feel with this question? %, 97.4%. Wow, I need to know the calculation behind that. Absolute phrase, yes, stuck with two choices in the end. That's the story of sentence correction, right? So choices D and E appear to be the more popular choices. So tell me, how did you approach this? First of all, how many of you use the meaning-based approach? Okay, so tell me, what was your thought process? Tried to use it. What was your thought process? I looked at what was chiseled, okay? Okay, so let's go through this. Monasteries are chiseled, absolutely right. So let's solve this. Many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. The mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia are dotted with hundreds of monasteries. So simple sentence structure, right? So aspect one is that according to what the sentence is saying, mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia have been discussed, and these regions were chiseled from solid rock centuries ago, and these regions are marked with hundreds of monasteries. Everyone agrees with that this is the meaning that's being communicated by the sentence? Yes or no? Okay. Now, before you go into the error analysis, you have to always understand whether the meaning that's being communicated is logical or not. Okay, so you always question that, okay, is it logical? Look at, okay, aspect one is absolutely logical. Mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia have been discussed. These regions are marked with hundreds of monasteries. That's also correct. Now, when you look at aspect number two, the mountainous regions or the mountains were chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. How can mountains be chiseled? Right? That's not logical. You're absolutely right. Right? So you have to figure out whether everything that the author is saying is logical or not. Right? And that's when you figure out, okay, it's not, that's when you come to the conclusion that it's not logical to say that the mountains were chiseled from solid rock. So what was actually chiseled? Then you look at the other portions of the sentence and figure out, okay, what of all the entities could be chiseled? It's absolutely logical to say that these hundreds of monasteries are chiseled. Okay, so again, what are we doing here? This is an official question, by the way, okay, official question, which is communication based question, right? So always verify after you understand the meaning of the sentence by doing strategic pausing. Always understand whether the sentence makes logical sense. Okay, if it's not logical, then infer the logical meaning. So remember, in question number 2, we had to infer the meaning because we didn't get the entire causality. In this question, an official question, we need to infer the meaning because we figured out that this particular aspect is not logical. Okay, so you need to take that extra step before you start looking at the answer choices. Okay, so in this case, again, the error, again, step number 2 becomes almost non-existent because you've already incorporated step number 2 in your step number 1. Okay, the meaning is illogical because of how the modifier has been placed. Okay, so now we take a look at the answer choices. Again, so choice number B, again, grammatically, there is nothing wrong in choice B. Choice B, grammatically, is there anything wrong? Grammatically, is there anything wrong? Absolutely nothing, right? But aspect number 2 is not logical. So choice B is rejected. Now, there is that redundancy error here with many hundreds of monasteries. Hundreds automatically means several hundreds, so many is redundant over here. But again, that the main thing over here is that it doesn't communicate logical meaning. Let's look at choice C. Hundreds of monasteries, many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Now aspect 1 is fine, aspect 2 is also fine, aspect 3 is fine, right? Are dotting the mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia, here verb tense issue. There is no sense of continuity over here. This is a fact, so it should be presented with a simple tense, right? So continuous tense is incorrect here. So this is a grammatical error. Now let's look at choice D. This is the choice which a number of you were confused about. The mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia are dotted with hundreds of monasteries, so that's fine. Many of which are chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Now, in terms of all the three aspects, from logic standpoint, they are all fine. But look at the verb here, are chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Do you see an issue here? There's a verb tense issue. This should have been a past action. This action happened centuries ago. This is a past tense. And that's what is wrong with this sentence. From meaning standpoint, everything is fine. Okay. We come to choice E. Choice E is absolutely correct here. Many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Now again, some of you may have rejected choice E. Again, quite a few of you selected choice E, about 43% of the class. But some of you may have rejected choice E because you may have found this structure a little bit weird. But this is a noun plus noun modifier structure, and this is something that we teach in our modifiers module. Okay. Usage of them and which is interchangeable. Frankly, we don't really need to worry about that nuance thing. I'm going to call that as a nuance thing. Yes, on some technical grammatical level, them and which may not be interchangeable, but I don't believe I'm equipped enough to answer that question, or I don't even think that you need to worry about that in this case. Okay, there are much bigger issues with choice D versus choice E is absolutely fine, but there's much bigger issues, much more straightforward issues, and that's the beauty of sticking to those high deterministic things, right? And sticking and basing it all on the meaning. Okay, so one possible faulty thought process, and which I'm glad that not many of you have actually gone through, because I can see from this poll a number of you rejected choices A and B. That's really good. Okay, but one possible faulty thought process, meaning of A, you read the sentence, you don't find any major issues with the sentence, you think that it looks a little bit weird because of many of them chiseled. Okay, you reject choice A. Then when you come to choice B, you find it absolutely fine because B conveys the meaning of A and it's written in pretty standard form, so you accept choice B as the correct answer. You reject choices C, D, and E because they all communicate meaning that's different from choice A. Okay, and you reject all of them. Would you have used this thought process if you were not focused on meaning? If you didn't doubt, if you didn't look at the logical meaning of the sentence, it's very likely that you could have followed this thought process. Okay, so again, very, very important for you to have that 100% clarity of the meaning. Don't take things on face value. Assimilate the meaning and make sure that the meaning is logical. If it's not logical, then you make sure that you infer the logical meaning. Okay. So in this was an official question, advanced book again, question number 257, splits were misleading, choice A incorrect, grammatically correct, but illogical meaning. Again, you need to verify if the meaning is logical and then you need to infer the logical meaning. Only then move on to the answer choices. Okay? All right. Now, tell me one thing. What's the source that you utilize for every SC question? For solutions. What solutions do you utilize for every SC question? Okay, GMAT Club, e-GMAT, official guide. Does your source provide you to the solution of this level of detail that goes into, which aspects of meaning are you getting? Do you get such solutions on GMAT Club and official guide? No. Right? So will you be able to learn the meaning-based approach without the solutions that are as detailed as what we talked about in questions 1, 2, and 3? Clearly not. Okay. So each solution in e-GMAT is created utilizing the meaning-based approach, whether it's application file questions, whether it's practice file questions, whether it's Scholaranium questions, whether it's official guide questions. Okay, so again, step one, understand the meaning. Make sure that you get everything from the sentence. If the sentence is not logical, then we infer the meaning before we move on to the next steps. Okay. All right, so let's come to question number 4 here. Let's follow the same thing for question number 4. Okay, actually, before I show you the question, let me just get a pulse for the class here. How is it going for you right now? How's the session so far? Do you like it? Have you learned something substantial from the session? Okay, learned new thing, awesome, great session, loved every bit of it. Okay. Okay, so let me see this. Good, but I've not been able to fully absorb it. I'm following. Okay, so again, you will need to work. The point of this session is to tell you how important the meaning-based approach is. I don't expect to teach you the meaning-based approach such that you get to 90 percentile level right here, right? For that, it takes effort, right? It's not going to be easy, but you need to be first convinced that this is the only way for you to attain that 90th percentile ability. Okay, and then you utilize the e-GMAT course to learn that method, to learn that application method. Okay. Okay, good. So let's go through there are 2 more questions left. So let's solve these 2 questions as well. Please click on still solving. Okay, let's get some more responses here. Okay, here you go. All right, I'm going to end the session. I'm going to end this poll right now. Not ending the session, guys. All right. So here are the results. Choice D is the correct answer. 37.5% of the class selected choice D. Okay. So let's go through the solution here. A star will compress itself into a white dwarf, a neutron star, or a black hole after it passes through a red giant state. So essentially what's happening is, if you split it into its clauses, its sentence structure, a star will compress itself into these three things after it passes through this red giant stage, depending on mass. And this is where the problem is. You don't know what depending on mass is talking about. Is it talking about the fact that it after the star passes through a red giant stage, or is it describing that a star will compress itself into these three things depending on its mass? And that is where the issue is. So in this sentence as well, grammatically the sentence seems to be fine, okay, but you don't know as to what this modifier is modifying. Okay, you are confused about that, and that is why this sentence is wrong. So you need to infer the logical meaning, and the logical meaning is that it should describe will compress. Okay, so now we take a look at the answer choices. So for those of you who rejected choice A, did you reject it because of the reason that I just specified? Oh, good. I see a very detailed one here as well. So, okay. So, good. Now let's take a look at choice B here. Choice B, after passing through a red giant stage, depending on its mass, a star will compress itself into blah, blah, blah. Again, this is the same issue here in choice B as well. You're not sure about what depending on its mass is describing. So you're absolutely right over here. So that's why choice B is wrong. So my question to those of you who selected choice B, and there are quite a few of you who selected choice B, why did you not reject choice B on the same basis that you rejected choice A? Tell me that. Why did you not reject choice B on the same lines? There is no problem with the pronoun here. The problem with choice B is that it can modify either after passing through red giant stage, or it can modify the will compress. That's the problem. So again, it's very important to have that solid basis of what this is modifying. Okay? Depending on its mass, it refers to the star. Okay, so over here, I thought depending on its mass describes the star. You are assuming that, right? But you don't know whether this is the break in the sentence or whether this is the break in the sentence. You don't know whether this is the entire thing or whether this is the entire thing. It can go either way. And that is what the problem with this sentence is. It is a dangling modifier, yes. Okay. Now, let's take a look at choice C. So, after passing through a red giant stage, a star's mass will determine. So, again, this is the problem here. After passing through, and again, quite a few of you selected choice C as well. After passing through a red giant stage, a star's mass. Now, what this is telling is that star's mass passes through a red giant stage, and that's not right. The star passes through the red giant stage. Okay, that's what is wrong. Again, determine if it compresses here. It refers to the mass, not the stars. Itself also refers to mass, right? So choice C is wrong on many different levels. Okay, let's take a look at choice D. Mass determines, so whether a star after passing through, so this part is right, a star after passing through the red giant stage will compress. Mass determines whether a star will compress itself. So this is absolutely correct. Okay, so choice D, there is no problem. Choice E, again, similar issues. The mass of a star after passing through, mass of a star after passing through. That's wrong here. Now here, I have a question here, mass of what though? Now mass determines whether a star, I think it's very, I understand that it's not explicitly stated its mass or star's mass. I understand that. However, in this case, what else could the mass be of? Mass determines whether a star will compress itself into a white dwarf, a new neutron star, or a black hole. Okay, there's nothing else that we are talking about in this sentence that the mass could be of. So there's no ambiguity here, and that's why choice D is fine. Okay. So again, in this question, what's happening is this is another official question. Okay. Advanced book again, question number 263, 100% underlined, splits not possible. Choice A is grammatically correct but illogical meaning. Okay. Other choices have pronoun reference error as the grammatical error. Okay. And again, you have to do the same thing. You need to verify if the meaning is logical and you need to infer the meaning. That's very, very important. Okay. Now let's come to the last question in this session. Question number 5. Go ahead and click on still solving. Okay, here you go. Okay, last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. This, I would say, is one of the more difficult questions in the session, but I can see that the accuracy for this question is also the highest. So those 2 points don't gel, right? So choice B is the correct answer. So 61% of the class got this question correct. Now tell me, what is wrong with choice A? So I'm going to ask you to solve this question right now. What is wrong with choice A? A little bit more, expand it a bit more, idiom wise, what is wrong? So buy is wrong. Why is buy wrong? Not only but also need to have, okay. So there's parallelism issue for sure in choice A. So let's read the sentence. The water strider, a species of semi-aquatic insects, can not only walk on the surface of water but also can generate enough upward thrust with its legs to launch itself off the surface by achieving one of the most complex physical maneuvers, jumping on water. Okay. So when I see this sentence, there is one thing which is clear. There are multiple things which the sentence is talking about, right? That it's talking about water strider, WS. It can do two things. It can walk on the surface of water, but it can also generate enough upward thrust with its legs to launch itself off the surface. Okay, so it can also jump on the surface by achieving one of the most complex physical maneuvers, jumping on water. So the problem with this sentence is that if we just take a look at the aspects, so WS can do two things. It can walk on the surface and it can generate sufficient force with its legs such that it launches itself from the surface. Now, the next aspect over here is that it does these two things by achieving a complex maneuver, jumping on water. And this is what is not logical. The WS, the water strider, generates sufficient force so that it launches itself off the surface, and that leads to him jumping on the water, achieving that complex maneuver. So the cause and effect is actually reversed in the way the sentence has been written. By achieving is not logical here. How many of you were able to identify that as the issue with choice A, that it's not logical? The thing has been reversed here. Good. Now, be very frank. Would you have been able to identify that as an issue if you were not following the meaning-based approach? No. And I can't tell you how much satisfaction that gives me. Okay. Because the very fact that you can identify that you would not have been able to focus on this if you were not following meaning-based approach is a testament to the fact that you believe in this method. You believe that this is the way to achieve that 90th percentile. And once you believe it, you will be able to take action so that you can learn that approach. Okay? All right. So in terms of the issues here, and look again, I want you to start doing this, okay? I want you to start writing down all the aspects, all the key aspects that you identify from step number 1, and make a list of that alongside the list of your grammatical errors. Right now, the key thing, one major thing that's missing from your SC prep is, because you don't focus on the meaning, you don't include this listing of the aspects that you need to evaluate each and every answer choice against. You only evaluate answer choices against grammar errors. You don't identify, you don't do that assessment from the meaning based, from the aspects of the sentence that the author wants to communicate. Start doing this, okay, and you'll start to see the way it has happened for this question. You'll start to see that you will be able to answer questions correctly. And I'm 100% confident that if you were following your splits approach, you would have rejected choice A comfortably, but you would have selected choice D, because in choice D, the parallelism error has been corrected, but this meaning error still exists. Okay. Now choices C and E, they have further complications with the meaning. Generating upward thrust, again, this is just reverse thing over here. That's why A12 is wrong, A2 is wrong, because there is no causal relationship here. Okay. Choice E, again, generating, it messes up with the A12 aspect. Now look at how easy it is to, once you understand the various aspects from the meaning, when you're evaluating answer choices, you are that prompt, you're that quick to say, oh, this is the aspect that's correct, and this is the aspect that's not correct. Do you see that? Because this is the level. I know today you may not be able to do it to the degree that I'm able to do it, but this is the level that you need to come at. And you will be able to arrive at this level if you, from the very beginning, if you start following the meaning-based approach. And for that, you need to have the solutions that give you that feedback. If the solutions themselves don't talk about meaning, then you won't be able to get this level of analysis with you. You won't be able to improve upon this aspect. So start using the solutions that give you this level of analysis. Okay. All right. So again, in this question, this is an e-GMAT question. 75% of the sentence is underlined. Splits are misleading in this question. Okay. And again, from the standpoint of the meaning aspect, it's the same as question number 3. Grammatically correct. Okay. So in this case, choice A was not grammatically correct, but we know that choice A communicated illogical meaning. So you had to infer the meaning here. But in terms of the meaning usage, you had to understand the meaning 100%. You had to verify that the meaning is logical, and then you needed to infer the logical meaning. Okay. So with this, let me just ask you a few more questions here. I'm going to invite Rajat back into the session while I ask you this. So what is it that you feel you need to work on going forward now? Tell me, what is it that you need to work on going forward? Understand the meaning? What is the process that you will apply now? Concepts application, good. Meaning-based approach, good. All right. Read slowly on 200 concepts. Strategic pausing, very good. Understanding meaning in one go, absolutely. Okay. All right. So I wish you all the very best to prepare the right way. Okay. We are here. You need to send us an email. Tell us what you're faltering in, where you need help, and we're going to help you out. And with that, I'm going to leave you guys with Rajat, who's going to give you his closing comments here. All the very best. Over to you, Rajat.
All right, guys. So thank you very much for that feedback. I think this feedback definitely helps. Let me actually move forward very quickly to really just conclude. Acing the GMAT is hard work. I mean, it's by no means easy. That's why only the top 6% of students go about doing this. It also requires sacrifices, and I want to just reiterate that hey, the reason why you want to get to that high score is because it leads to that $500,000 worth of ROI, which is because it allows you to get to top business schools. Top business schools now offer more scholarships than ever, and 50% of these scholarships go to students who score 730 or higher. In fact, based on our estimate, and e-GMAT has got about $18 million worth of scholarship every year. About 80% of these scholarships go to students who score 700 or higher. And again, the last piece, probably the biggest one, the biggest motivation for you to go to a top school is the difference in total earnings, at least $500,000 over a 10-year period. Just to really stress upon the importance of these points, I'm going to show you some anecdotal some statistical as well as anecdotal data. So here are the median scores, the trend in which median scores have been moving over the last 5 years, so between the years 2014 and 2018. And what you rarely see is that, first of all, this table doesn't include the likes of Harvard and Stanford, where the median score is already touching that 730. But pretty much at every other top school, the median score is moving in that direction. In fact, out of the 25 top schools ranked on Poets and Quants, at 23 out of them, the median scores improved or went up. For the 24th school, the median score remained the same, and for the 25th one, that was the only one which already had a high median score. It's where the median score decreased. At Columbia and MIT, 80% of the admitted class has scores of 700 or higher. In fact, if you watch on YouTube videos of some top admission consultants, that really call MIT, Stanford, Harvard, and then the likes of Columbia now suckers for high GMAT scores. And this is despite the fact that the number of test takers who were taking the GMAT are 15% fewer in the year 2018 than in the year 2014. In the year 2014, based on our estimates, about 250,000 people took the GMAT. In the year 2018, that number was about 200,000. Okay. So this is despite the fact that the applications to top B schools have been trending downwards. Despite that, B schools are constantly going towards high scorers. So well, you're absolutely correct. But this is despite the fact. Imagine if the applications were to start going up again, which is what is expected in the year 2020. The trend would actually is expected to even further strengthen. And this is a quote from Mark Idle, who's the managing editor at Poets and Quants. He says, the bottom line remains that only the best of the best have a shot at getting into any of these schools. And there's some anecdotal data. In recent years, one of our students, Mansi Diman, scored 770 on the GMAT. She got into Harvard and with a $90,000 scholarship. Another student, Victor Makula, who had a 770. Again, the YouTube icons can lead to their interviews. This person scored a 770 on the GMAT. Again, had $142,000 worth of fellowship from Ross as well as Keenan Flagler. So that's like full fellowship. And Kong Bui, another 760 scorer, had not just, he didn't even, scholarship amount didn't end at full fellowship. He actually was paid $1,700 a month to study at Ohio Fisher. Some more anecdotal data. So Nishant, who scored a 740 on the GMAT, he actually took the GMAT 4 times to score 740. After his third attempt, in which he had a 690, he applied to various B schools. He was rejected from each one of them, and the feedback that TAC and one other B school gave him was that his GMAT score wasn't high enough. They liked his candidacy, but didn't like his GMAT score. He then improved to 740. He got multiple fellowships. He got a full fellowship from Ohio Fisher. So similarly ranked school to the ones that rejected him at a 690. He is actually currently studying at Columbia. Pravi, rejected from various schools. Actually, she didn't get a single interview invite with a score of 690. Within hours of reporting her 740 score, she got interview invites from multiple schools and scholarship from Georgetown and UCLA Anderson. She's actually currently studying at Kellogg. And Krishnakant, who like Nishant, was rejected at a 680 score in round 2, improved to 720, received 3 full fellowships in round 3. I believe he's currently studying at Texas A&M. He just joined a couple of months back. So again, shows the power of that GMAT score. And again, as I said, it's hard work. It'll require sacrifices, but it's probably one of the best investments you can make in your future. So again, get to that 730 score for that $500,000 worth of fellowship. And just to recap this, to get to that score, you would need that 90th percentile score. To get that 90th percentile score, you'd need to master the meaning-based approach, excel in concepts, and learn to apply those concepts. And Pyra, I think, discussed those points in detail over here. Now, how do you get to that excelling in those 200 odd concepts? You need feedback, and that's why we provide those feedback points to you, because these feedback points help you achieve precision and perfection. And what detailed solutions play, the role that they play is they tell you where you faltered, because without the detailed solution, you can't figure out the step at which you faltered on. And they also tell you why you faltered. With that, I want to thank everyone, and I will take any questions that you have over here. So, well, I already answered your question about the decline in MBA applications. You can also download the session presentation over here, and there's a link of upcoming free sessions. We have the number of properties session. We also have the RC webinar, which is next week. Okay, how do you register for e-GMAT course? You just go to our buy page and then register for that. Sandeep can help you with that. If that's a good idea to apply in round 3, round 3 generally is not a great round to apply in. Usually I prefer that people apply in round 1 or round 2. Round 1 and round 2, in my opinion, are actually interchangeable in many cases. What I have actually experienced, which is despite the popular belief that round 2 tends to be slightly better for students than round 1 is. But yeah, in most for most purposes they are interchangeable. Now, when it comes to round 3, I've seen people get full fellowships in round 3. Our e-GMATers have. You saw the case of Krishnakant. He got full fellowships in round 3. Let me actually share his story. And you can really see that that this thing. So yeah, let me see. For some reason, can't get to that. Yeah, has his journey. You can really get to this over here. So Oxford R2 versus R3. So if you're talking about the same school, R2 is always going to be better than R3. I mean, that's just something that's there to consider. Now, having said that, if you were to ask applying to Oxford with the 650 versus the 720 and 650 in R2 versus 720 in R3, I would say 720 in R3. For 2 reasons. One, the median score at Oxford is not as high, and 2, the 720 you'll probably get some scholarship, and you'd be among the top students who apply to Oxford. For the 650, you'd be slightly lower than the median student who applies to Oxford. Well, it says, how long does it take to make it through the e-GMAT course? Well, it depends on where you need help. So everyone who goes through the e-GMAT course personalizes his or her learning, and that's the benefit of having a course that's data driven, which has milestones built into it. Let's assume you start at the 50th percentile, then on each of the 3 sections, SC, CR, and RC, then for the verbal part, you're looking at about 120 odd hours of effort. And depending on how much time you can spend in a week, you're looking at between a month to a month and a half of effort overall. So most people spend about 20 hours a week. That means 120 hours is about 6 weeks. Okay, guys, with that, if there are no other questions, okay, Sahil says I'm at 40 to 50 percentile. Is it possible to cross 700 in a month? Yes, it is. We've had many students who do this. Again, remember, a month is what I call as an incomplete data point. Why? Because the people who spend 100 hours in a month, the people who spend 60 hours, there are some who spend 140 hours in a month, and so it's really. Let me just share a success story with you. Actually, this is one of our oldest success stories, probably the oldest one that we've had. It's from 2012. But what you'd really see with this one is this guy improved to 700 in a week. Now, the reason I never believed anyone could, by the way, to be very frank, but this guy studied full time. He was an entrepreneur, and he said, I'm going to take a week off from my work. I'm going to study full time, and he did it. I mean, and this is 2012. Yeah, and then a lot of people who are in merchant navy, a lot of people who are oil and gas professionals, they are able to do this. Why? Because they have clean breaks. So if you put in 7 to 8 hours a day, yes, a month is more than enough time to do this. So again, we measure time in hours, not so much in months. So and we can give anyone a really great estimate with regards to this. Okay, guys, with that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. Make sure you join us tomorrow for the number properties webinar as well. And you go through the free trial. I mean, the free lessons over there will tell you how to achieve excellence at a concept level. I don't think we have any application files, but the concept files will tell you that. You'll see the difference in clarity of learning that you get from, let's say, learning from another video course versus this, or learning from a book versus learning from an interactive course such as e-GMAT. Thank you very much and happy learning.